Alright, welcome back to the SuperCoach Nuff channel. In this video we're going to review the first week of the NRL preseason challenge, as well as hopefully get to see the teams for week 2. Generally you get more teams that play a more closer to full strength side in the second or the final week of the trials, I suppose. It's going to be a little bit different this year given some of the teams heading off to Vegas, I think, are still playing trials this week, so they'll obviously wheel out a second string team while their first team heads over. But all going to plan, that'll be available, and we'll sort of have a look how that shapes the team. But if not, we'll have to use a bit of video editing trickery to get through because I've accidentally double booked myself this afternoon. Don't know what I was thinking. But I guess we'll just go in order of the games from last week. So, excuse me, the Storm and the Bulldogs was first, and obviously as a Bulldogs fan, the early chance of premiers were coming up after we got the Chocolates 24-12 over the Storm. On the Melbourne Storm side, I think the only real sort of player of note, not to say there wasn't other first grade players playing, but we're all keen on how Ryan Papenhuyzen would look. And I guess his try at the end of the first half there, where he just sped past everyone, chasing the kick from Pezzett, and scored the try to put them ahead going into half time. Sort of suggested to me that he is good to go. So you can see he got the R on him. He's in the team. So, very impressive. It'd be interesting to see how they use Fa'alongo, given that Papenhuyzen is good to go. So I'll just put a little mention there for him on my watch list. But hopefully we'll find out in about 10 minutes at the time of recording. But on the Bulldogs side of things, a few more players to have a discussion about. So Drew Hutchinson looked really good starting at 7. And I'd suggest he is the front runner for that spot. And obviously the ability to play him in the centre wing, would make that super ideal for us as super coaches. So fingers crossed he can lock that down. Bronson Xerri looked really good too. And I mean, off the back of that game, I wouldn't be surprised if he was named to start this week and consequently got picked to start round 1. It might be a bit stiff on Connor Tracy, but Bronson Xerri just looked really good. So super keen to get him in if he's picked. Obviously a little bit more expensive than the cheapies we're after, but if he sort of fits the bill, I think we'll find a spot for him. Jamin Salmon was an interesting one. He's played at 13 in the first half, the lock forward role, and that very much that ball distributor role. Obviously no Kurt Mann, no Josh Curran, so I still predict he'll probably play off the bench. But it's interesting that they look to use him in the middle. Obviously he can play on the edge, but there could be a few more minutes for Salmon, and I guess, depending on injuries and even structure, could be a sneaky shout for our squads if he, got the 13 jumper. And Sam Hughes is obviously, I guess, the one most people are talking about from the Dogs. Looked really impressive. Could have got a try if he could have just hung on to it. But I guess, having that sort of upside at his price in the front row, I think he'll be in a lot of teams going into the start of the season. But in saying that, I think the Storm made the Dogs look pretty good. Wasn't the Storm that we're used to. A lot of errors and defensive lapses. But a win's a win when you're a Dogs fan, so we'll absolutely take it. In terms of the Indigenous All-Stars game, I didn't really take too much away from it purely because it's not, the club setup. But I guess if we had to talk about one player of note, it would be Braden Trindle, got man of the match, Arthur Beetson medal. And it looks like, he could take some of the sort of upside away from Nico Hines. But I guess also knowing his ability could actually free up Nico Hines a bit as not being, the sole target. So it's a tough one to get a read on. All the numbers sort of suggest Hines will drop a bit, but I think, he's still clear top two halfback. And if you can swing it in your budget, I think, starting with both Cleary and Hines is a good option. It's currently what I'm going with. But I can totally understand people going one way or the other with starting one gun and a cheaper option at that position. Um, so I think the next game was the Sharks and the Newcastle. So obviously the Sharks wasn't too much to talk about. Um, in saying that, I didn't see this game, so a lot of this is second-hand knowledge. But I think, the clear and obvious sort of standout was Dylan Lucas starting on that left edge. Scored two tries, and this was without Kalen Ponga feeding him the ball. Um, Also, it sounds like Jaden Bradley's going to start the season on the bench at best if he is playing. So might be an option or one we look to get off of. Obviously, very popular, cheap hooker in the preseason, but we may need to go for the Parramatta guys, whoever it is that gets the gig there. And I've got Dan Gagai listed there, not so much for Dan Gagai, but his brother Jacob, who plays for South Sydney. Um, I know I'm sort of jumping a few games here, but it sounds like they're keen to get him over to Vegas to play on the wing in round one or round zero, whatever they're calling the Vegas games. Round one for Supercoach purposes. Um, and so bottom dollar cheapie he would be. He's not in the game just yet, hence why his near identical brother Dane, who's not a twin by any stretch, but just they look so similar when I saw the photo of Jacob. So that was just a reminder to talk him up as a potential cheapie for our centre wings. Excuse me. The next game I believe was the Roosters and somebody. So it sounded like James Tedesco had a really good game. Um, Heap of tackle breaks and that sort of deal. So it could be a nice point of difference if you're not keen on Pappenhausen and Ponga or Mitchell or Turbo, whoever. There's plenty of options, and Teddy's just one of them. So if you like Teddy, you could absolutely get on. I've got Billy Smith there. Looks like with Dom Young missing the trip to Vegas, he could get a good crack at the centre spot. Obviously, it is a bit of a risk given that, you know, Dom Young will come back into the side for round two, you'd imagine. And then you'd imagine Swally would have to move in. Um, and you're probably not going to sit Joey Manu on the pine. So all things sort of point to maybe a one and done for Billy Smith. So it might be an avoid, but just to add that talking point in. And Terrell May, sounded like he come off the bench and did all the things, which is what you want to see from him. So you can see the green light there. He has sort of made his way into his squad at the moment. Um, yeah, pretty excited about the upside of that sort of pick. So they played Manly. It took me a little while to remember who it was. No talking points. Well, I don't think they played a full strength side by any stretch. But I guess the obvious one, not that he's listed, but Ben Travojevic looks like he's locked in that left edge spot. So, you can have him in your centre wing with confidence. The next game was the Eels and the Raiders. So for the Eels, the only sort of talking point was apparently Tuolangi had a good game. Whether it's good enough to out Sean Lane, don't think so, or Bryce Cartwright for that matter. But I guess he's putting the pressure on, which is good to see. And then with the Raiders, a few sort of talking points, I suppose. KO Weeks and Ethan Strange started in the halves. Sounded like Ethan Strange did a lot of the organising. So I guess if they want to go that way of having sort of like a split halves combo, that there's a chance that Ethan Strange could get the nod at six. We're waiting for teams this week, obviously. But if they go for a more running option, similar to Jack Whiten previously, then I think Weeks might get the nod. Um, Ideally, Strange would get in there. Um, and I'd actually pick him in my 5'8" slot if that was the case. Um, and I guess the reasoning for that would be to try and make it easy to get Jaden Campbell in once he returns from his injury. I sort of have a bit of a plan around that, but I'll talk about that more once we look at the team in full. Mariota apparently was pretty good starting at 13. I just don't know where the minutes are once they get everyone back. Like, they play Smithies and Tarpany and Papali'i and Corey Horsburgh comes back. So, it might be a bit of a slow burner on the bench, but definitely capable if a opportunity comes up. And Chevy Stewart, potentially could get that fullback spot. The big unknown is what they do with Seb Chris when he comes back. But I guess if he can sort of nail down the spot in this trial and round one, then we might have ourselves a bottom dollar cheapie to start the season with that will make us some good money. So the final game I think for Saturday was the Charity Shield, so I should do both teams at the same time, I suppose. It sort of mixes up a bit, but I guess the only real talking point with South was Tallis Duncan. Um, Started at 18th man, and it looked like it was a pretty full team, other than I guess their key spine members and that sort of thing. Lachlan Elias excluded from that, but I guess their forward pack looked pretty full strength, and he was on the outer, so he may be one to just sort of sit and wait on. And for the Dragons, they didn't look overly impressive. I think a few people have gone off Kyle Flanagan or for that one performance. I don't think it's the worst pick, but um, it's not a slam dunk either by any stretch. Be interesting to see if Lomax gets a go at fullback. Apparently, Tyrell Sloan wasn't fantastic in the spot. And then I guess that sort of second row bench sort of area. Tom Eisenhuth got the start and looked okay from all reports. Dylan Egan, come off the bench. So, he's bottom dollar, but do we go him? And also, Viliami Fafita featured on the bench in what seemed to be a pretty full strength side. Um, so, is he a chance of locking down some minutes in the middle? Bottom dollar dual position would be pretty handy to have in our sides. So then on to the Sunday games. So the Warriors and the Tigers. So do the Tigers first, I suppose, because people got pretty pumped up about Appy Coruscant kicking goals. So it probably puts a little line through Aiden Caesar as an option. Um, there is an argument about him playing in the 5'8" slot, I think, because I guess a lot of people say, well, Appy Coruscant kicks goals, therefore he plays 80 minutes. I don't know if that's the case. Again, we'll have a look at the team list very shortly. But I feel like maybe he'll kick goals when he's on the field for that 60 minutes. But then if he does get spelled off, I think they'll just rely on Caesar as the backup goal kicker. So um, it could work out, but it's definitely a look this week and reassess. And then the other sort of wrinkle in that plan is he does have to buy the first round. So who do you get to cover for him? Do you just go with Parramatta hooker, or which way do you go? And Alex Seyfarth started at 13. By reports, looked pretty good. I didn't follow his game too closely. Caught a little bit of the game, I'll be honest, but I wasn't watching it too closely on Sunday. But yeah, he could be, especially if you've got like a Tallis Duncan, could be a straight swap at that similar price point to get in your second row bench. And then for the Warriors, looks like Metcalf's probably the favourite for the 5'8" job to start the season. Not the cheapest, so not ideal, but it is what it is. But a bit of talk about Leia Tower getting the start in the right centre spot over Rocco Berry. So if we could get him at 238k, we would absolutely have a piece of that, I think. So definitely one to put on the watch list. And then the Queensland games. So we had the Cowboys and who they play? The Broncos. So as you can see there, I think the main talking point from the Cowboys team, which was pretty much their second string side, was Finny Fuyaki. He just looked really good. Um, don't know how Hyland Lukey's fitness is coming back from that knee injury, but I guess given the way the teams are lined up, it must be okay enough that he'll play this week. But he could seriously knock down the door for a starting spot. So one to keep an eye on. If he starts on the bench, it might not be worth starting him. He is slightly elevated at that 292k, but if he got the start, you'd have to find a way to get him in. Even if you only had a cheapie slot, you'd have to downgrade someone else, I think. And with the Broncos, Brandon Piakura is obviously the big talking point. Had a really great game. Looks like a lock for Supercoach, and has done his knee. So I reckon he's a chance of playing in Vegas. My gut feeling is he'll miss the first week and then he'll be back for round two. Um, excuse me. But yeah, then the question is, can we afford to just sort of bench him for a week? Um, I think they played in the first game, so it's not even really a viable loophole option to bench him for your vice captain score. But yeah, I guess it's just one of those things where you got to make that call whether you want to save a trade or whether you want to, you know, go with the playing number in round one. And I got Xavier Willis in there just as I guess he did play in the All Stars game, so we don't really know how he'll fit in the forward rotation. But he did look good in the All Stars game in saying that. Barged over for a try there. So would be great to see him get some minutes, but I think the team they put out wasn't too far off. He might take Marty Tapeu, I think is how you're supposed to say it now, his place. Um, so that might not be the biggest minute role, but definitely one to keep an eye on. And then finally, the Dolphins and the Titans. So for the Dolphins, Jack Bostock, looks really good. Looks like he will play round one. No stress there. You can probably play him safely if you want to. Jake Averillo also looked quite good, but maybe stuck behind Tessie New. Um, it's hard to say at this point. I guess team lists that should be available now might be very helpful with that. And for the Titans, I guess Big Isaac Varasu Malawi looked really good. Tino's little brother, although he's not that little. So you'd imagine he'd force his way into a bench prop spot. Not ideal, but does look better than what he did last year. I got Cleese Haas mentioned there too, just with Dave Fafita missing. But I think the fact that they didn't name, or they named Haas in to play starting edge in that game where they basically played no one from their starting team, suggests that maybe he's, after the likes of Joe Stimson, Bo Fermor, etc. Um, but I guess on the plus side, Keanu Kinney didn't get named. They had De Groot, I think, was the fullback for the Titans. So he looks like he's locked in for those first few weeks while Preston Campbell's out injured. So if you're looking to go cheap in the fullback spot, I think he is the way to go. But also one to keep an eye on is Tony Francis. I think they're pretty settled in their centre wing spots at the Titans, but can score a try. So definitely one we can downgrade with, I think, through the season as injuries and form sort of take their toll. All right, so let's have a bit of a look, see if we've got some teams. Yes, we do. Happy days. So Rabbitohs Roosters first. So this will be the reserves. They're both off to Vegas. This one's that on Friday night, so a bit of a flat one to begin. Buddy Gordon, haven't seen him for years. Good to see him back. Braden Burns playing fullback for South, so that's interesting. Dylan Napa not going to Vegas, that's interesting. Xavier Var's been a bit of hype about him. The Roosters prop forward, so it'd be good to see him get a run. And some other youngsters there, good gear. Sharks Bulldogs, this is a bit more interesting. So Blake Wilson, Bronson Sherry named, Stephen Crichton, Josh Adokar. So I've skipped the Sharks, apologies, but obviously Bulldogs for life. So I think maybe Jacob Carraz's got a bit of injury that might just be keeping him fresh. Um, but yeah, maybe Bronson Sherry's pushed ahead um, of Connor Tracy, although he's not named, so maybe they're resting him too. I'm not sure. So very interesting there. Burton and Hutcho starting. Um, Farmasuli, I think that's how you say it. Farmasili starting for the Dogs in the front row. So no Liam Knight, which is interesting. He might have picked up a bit of an injury. Viliami Kikau starting, and then Jamin Salmon at 13. So I said this was one to keep an eye on. So they got Mann, Curran, Hughes all on the bench with Curtis Moran on the bench. So I don't think this is too far off their starting team. So big up Jamin Salmon. Welcome to my team. Yeah, because I guess Kurt Mann can cover Reed Marnie or the halves, or they might even just push Salmon wider if need be. Um, Fantastic. Love to see it. So you can see Toby Sexton named sort of in the extended numbers. So this sort of suggests Hutcho is locked in at halfback. Katoga was pretty good. You know, cheapy to look out for if one of these guys gets injured, I think. That being Kick Out Preston. Um, Very good stuff to see. With the Sharks, full strength, so no Kale Oro, which is a bit flat. Um, Other than that, not too many surprises. So all good there. So I think full strength teams, treat those as you will, except for maybe Wilson and Sherry. Question marks there. But we'll do our research through the week and we'll go from there. So the Storm and Knights, so again, a couple of full strength looking sides at first glance. So interesting that the Arrows moved to 13, but Kane Bradley getting the start on the edge. Sean Bloor in the reserves. That's very interesting. So maybe we put a bit of a line through Sean Bloor for the time being. Um, Also no Failongo, but doesn't look like he's in the squad, so maybe injured. Um, no Cam Munster. I'm guessing that's just a precautionary thing. Cool. And then on the Knights side of things, Tuala getting the nod on the other wing. So there's obviously a bit of talk about Jenkins, Tom Jenkins getting that spot, but perhaps not. So Kai Pierce Paul starting on the bench. So I think Lucas is locked into that left edge spot. Gamble and Hastings in the halves. So I know a few people were pumped up about Will Price's game on the weekend, but might just have to bide his time on the extended reserve there. Very good. So Warriors, Dolphins. So Tua Picky named at fullback. CNK is 50-50 chance of making it to round one. So, wouldn't be a long-term pick with Tua Picky, but, we'll do the job while CNK's out. Rocco Berry getting the start in the centres, so maybe that mail about Leia Tower wasn't quite accurate. Metcalf, 6, seems about right. Near Corey on the bench, I thought maybe Jackson Ford would move to the bench, but can see they've gone with Ford and Capewell on the edge. But yeah, pretty strong looking team there from the Warriors. And same deal with the Dolphins. So Tessie New looks like he's got the job over Avarillo and the centres. Yeah, Avarillo on the bench. So with Farah and Nichols. So I guess maybe sort of similar to their setup last week where they haven't really named a 17 as such. Because, yeah, you imagine Avarillo could do the utility role off the bench, but you wouldn't have Tafare and Donahue alongside Nichols in that sense. You'd imagine, these sort of guys would push their way into the 17. Sea Eagles Broncos, so this is another sort of reserve grade shootout. So I guess we're more looking for names that won't appear on the lists. Takura, Jaden Hunt, they played last week. Um, on the Sea Eagles side of things, so I think a few people said Jamie Humphries was going to get the nod as the utility, but he and Chan Kum Tong are playing. So maybe Carl Lawton, who was named to start at 9 last week, is going to play that bench utility role for the Sea Eagles, which is pretty interesting. And there was a bit of talk about Josh Schuster missing the trip to Vegas, but he's not named here, so maybe he's travelling over and may just play off the bench or in the 18 or something like that. Dragons Tigers, so Tyrell Sloan gets another crack at fullback. So Eisenhuth named to start on the edge again. So it does appear as though that's Tom Eisenhuth's spot to start the season. Jesse Marshke, they were talking about being the bench hooker. Spell Jacob Little for a bit. No value in that for Supercoach. But for feeders there again, which is nice, alongside Murdoch Masilla and Fatala Mariner. So Dylan Egan has dropped off the face of the planet apparently, which is interesting. They've got the Couchman brothers, Dan Russell, ready to go. So it sort of suggests that the pre-season hype was exactly just that. um, and on the Tigers side of things, so Buller, Staines, Olam, so this looks like a pretty full-strength team. So Kapoa starting. I'm not sure what's going on with Johnny Bateman. Might have to look into that. But Alex Seyfarth in the 13 again. Looks like he's a decent shout. Lockie Galvin. So bottom dollar 5/8 option. But, as the bench sort of utility, and particularly, if Coruscant plays big minutes, he's not getting any game time. But Paul Atoile and Samuel Afinu, um, played a bit for Manly last year, but might have that last forward spot locked up. Raiders Cowboys on Sunday. So interestingly, again they've gone Weeks and Strange in the half. So is it a shootout? Albert Hopewadi named it fullback. So have they, Chevy Stewart might be out of the running. Um, Asamoah, not sure about this lad playing on the wing, but could be interesting to see if he gets a run. And then the forwards. So it looks like no Joe Tarpany in the squad. Um, and then I guess the likes of Mariota, Solo being benched for Jed Stewart. Nick Cottridge being named on the bench. Does that suggest that maybe this isn't a 1 to 17 type setup? Perhaps. But Morgan Smith is named at 13. That'll be good to see him get a run there, and see if it sort of stands up to the hype that he's been pumped up with in the coming over from England. And the Cowboys looking pretty full strength. So Zach Labert's got the centre spot. Lukey and Nanai named to play on the edge. So a little line through Fini Filiaki for the time being. Um, and the bench looks pretty solid too. Sam McIntyre, interestingly enough, getting a run in the 17. I heard he did go pretty good on the weekend. And then the Titans and Eels. So Kinney named to start at fullback as predicted. Brimson in the centres. So this is looking pretty full strength. So Jacob Alec looks like he's going to get the nod on the edge. So we might have a bit of a look at his price. I don't think he'll be too far out of it. Cleese Haas named on the bench, so a bit of a line through that. So pretty cool. Verrill's named to start at hooker. Don't know if that's worth a look. The Eels also looking pretty full strength, so Lane and Cartwright locked in. Tuolungi getting the spot on the bench, but has gone with Lussick and Hands off the bench, so maybe the pre-season chat about playing an 80-minute hooker might have been a cheeky little lie as well from Brad Arthur, which will obviously make us rethink things for our team, I think. But I think that's the last of the games, which it is. So let's see how that shapes our team. So I guess just like gut reactions off of the first sort of week had the team looking like this. So Harry Grant stayed in. Brendan Hands sort of swapped for Brayley just because of the injury, but second guessing that now that he's named on the bench. So we'll just leave that because I think that's the price point we can afford. Um, we may need to go up to a Api Coruscant perhaps. uh, but in the front row, Totola was already in. I brought in Terrell May. Um, Liam Knight didn't sort of cover himself in glory, so I don't think we can afford to go that cheap in the front row. Um, so we'll sort of got found a bit of cash to bring May in. Hughes locked in for feeder, looking good for a round one start. So I think the front row is about right now. We'll lock that in. So kick out Curran. Curran off the bench is interesting, but I think he'll still, do enough work to justify his starting price. Sean Bloor, I think we might have to get out of. Pia Cora, we might have to hold on to, just given the options. Smithies, lock him in, and maybe Fuiaki out as well. So we'll just take them out of the picture for the time being. Cleary and Hines, I think we can still afford them. So Dylan Brown, basically, like I said, I didn't like what I saw at 5'8". So I've cut a few corners to bring in Dylan Brown at 5'8". Just set and forget. And I've got KO Weeks at the moment, but it's basically going to be whoever gets the Raiders 6 is going in there. So even if it's Ethan Strange, he's going to get slotted in the 5'8 slot, and I'll be able to use that to sort of swing him into the centres when it's time to bring in Jaden Campbell. So yeah, Ethan Strange is preferred, but I can sort of handle both options with the current setup. The centre wing, so Dylan Lucas is in. We sort of cut down Jacob Carraz to get him in. Um, Taylor Mace, I just realised we didn't see the World Club Challenge teams. If I go back, are they named yet? Probably not. Might be tomorrow. But for the time being, we'll just keep May in. I think we've got enough options if we do need to chop him, we can. Um, but, we'll just leave him in there for the time being and work around him. Hutchinson looks like he's good to go. Ben Travojevic, good to go. Bostock, good to go. Leia Tower, not good to go. And Stewart, perhaps not good to go. So we need to rethink that. And at the moment, I'm going with Ponga and Pappenhausen at the fullback. So upgraded blank Taff. But I guess, we've got 4 slots and 1.2 mil. So I think it's going to be a bit of value all the way. But what I might do is I took him out of the team, but I'll just plug in Tony Francis. Big fan of his after watching him play. But I think, that's what's going to become Jacob Gagai once he gets named for round one. So I think we still will have a bottom dollar cheapie. But then I think there was a few options popped up, namely, if I can find them. Kane Bradley is interesting, 240k centre wing if he did get the start in round one. So let's see if we can afford him actually. We'll plug him in. And then it was, trying to find him, Jamin Salmon. If he gets the starting gig at 13, he is a must have. And then saying I can't have any more centres, which is fine. Even though I am going to treat myself to another centre as soon as I can find him. So Tom Eisenhuth looks like they're keen to get him in. And then I can't afford Safard. How short am I? Ooh, 30 grand. So that would be, the bottom dollar cheapie instead of Kane Bradley as a speculative pick. So Sam Street, you're on as a placeholder. Scroll. Ooh, yep, got him. And that would give us $300 in the bank. So obviously, we'd like to have Eisenhuth down here somewhere. But I don't know if it's going to accommodate. So it could be that we end up chopping one of Bostock or May up. Um, and I guess based on the money, it's probably got to be May. So again, if we do need to get Bradley in, can't find him. He was 238. So and like I said, Ethan Strange is coming here. So obviously, if Ethan Strange got the shout, we could afford Bradley. So I guess this is just worst case scenario. Um, we could go with Kapoa as a dual position. Although what we could do is actually just bring Eisenhuth back as a dual position, and then that gives us 424 to spend in the second row. But surely there was something that looked good. So I'll say that now. Sean Keppie maybe. Bit of dual position flexibility with Fafita. Um, could it be Matt Eisenhuth maybe? Gets big minutes for Penrith. Hopefully. Um, Alright. Don't really know. Let's just lock in someone and we'll go away and have a bit more of a think about it. Kurt Mann. Why not another Bulldog? It won't be Kurt Mann. I'll just leave it blank. So I guess 400 to spend on a second rower, a winger, or a front rower if we use Fafita. But yeah, that's how the team's shaping up. So obviously, if you've got any thoughts, feel free to comment below the video. Like it if you're enjoying the SuperCoach content. Um, I guess if you're looking for fantasy, I will do a fantasy video. It's been a while, and I saw it had a massive amount of views. So shout out to all the fantasy fans. And other than that, I'll catch you in the next one.